Hey guys, welcome back to Genshin Interact. In today's 4-star discussion video, we're going to be talking about Bennett, his kit, how to build him, and how he can benefit your account. If you do enjoy content like this, please be sure to like and subscribe. We are also looking to create a Discord server once we reach 1,000 subscribers, so go ahead and smash that subscribe button for us. It really helps us out. Now, let's go on to the video.
The first thing that we're going to be kind of looking at is the talents and the abilities and passives that Bennett has. Looking at his normal attack, his skill, and his burst. Pretty simple with his normal attack, just has the normal and charge attacks are very, very simple, nothing crazy. And his plunging attack is the exact same. Going on to his skill, Bennett's skill is probably something that you'll use maybe for just some extra damage or maybe help with an ability on an artifact set as well. But with this skill, Bennett puts a little bit of pyro on a sword and then puts a strike of pyro damage on them. And this has a press and a hold version. The press version just does a quick slash of pyro in front of him. The hold has a very short charge up time. But when he does, the first level that he has in his hold strikes 2 times, dealing pyro damage, and then launches opponents into the air. And then his level 2 unleashes 3 consecutive attacks. But that last attack makes an explosion, which then sends both Bennett and his own enemy flying into the air. But do remember and know that actually Bennett takes no damage from this, even though he creates this explosion. He doesn't take any damage from it. But the big part about his kit is his burst. And Rift, what can you tell us about that?
So Bennett's burst is the primary reason you actually use him, because again, his normal and skill really aren't anything special. Bennett's burst, he will perform a jumping attack and he leaves behind this field called the inspiration field. And when you're inside this field, and we're going to talk about this at different constellation levels because it makes a big difference what constellation your Bennett is and how the field can actually affect your gameplay. So if the health of a character within the AoE of this field is equal to or falls below 70%, their health will continuously regenerate. And the amount of HP restored scales off of Bennett's max HP. Also, if the health of a character within the AoE is higher than 70%, they will gain an attack bonus that is based on Bennett's base attack. And we'll talk a little bit about this in a second, because that's very important. It also imbues characters within the AoE with Pyro. So do keep in mind that when you are in this, you can actually swirl using Animo characters. You can swirl some Pyro and grab from this. And also you might be affected by Pyro when standing in it.
Yeah, this burst is crazy, crazy good. And that's the whole reason why you kind of really want Bennett most of the time. And, speaking of his burst and his really utility and multiple things that he can help with, Bennett's been looking to be really good actually for Fontaine. He's always been a great character in general, but I feel like if anything, Bennett's usage and utility has maybe gone down just a tiny bit while we've been in Sumeru. And the only reason I say that is because a lot of the time we're focusing on Bloom and Hyper Bloom, which has nothing to do with the Pyro element. So Bennett kind of fell down a few notches, but I think with Fontaine coming out and getting these different characters in Fontaine that are going to be kind of crazy and good for these upcoming area, and that's going to be Linny and Lynette and, Yelan as well that are coming out in the banners, a video we just made. Linny is really based on doing that mono Pyro team. If you watched our video, you know that, and that's kind of crazy to know because Bennett's actually going to seem really, really good for this team. He'll be the healer, he'll be an attack bonus buffer, and that's going to obviously help Linny just do more damage because of his passives. So I think it's going to bring a lot more utility to Bennett once again and throw him back. I don't think Bennett ever really fell out of the meta, but I think Bennett's just been an always solid, amazing character to have. So, getting a free one as well in this upcoming little bit with events and stuff that we're looking to see, it seems like that actually is going to be a really, really good thing to do.
Yeah, and he will always be a great character. There's no doubt about that. And I think about even in the future, like with Natlin in the Pyro region, Bennett's just going to be that much better. I don't think, like you said, Vixen, he'll never fall out of the meta. He's just so good, and that's why we're making this video because, Hoyoverse is giving everyone a free Bennett in 4.0. But moving on to maybe talking about a little bit of passives. His first passive is called Rekindle, and all this does, it decreases his skill cooldown by 20%. So kind of going back a little bit to skill, kind of like Vixen was saying, it's really just a touch of pyro damage, but because of how low the cooldown can be, it is a good source of energy generation for your team, especially because, and we'll talk about in the artifacts section how you should build your Bennett. he's going to be an energy support as well as a healer. So it can be a good source of energy, especially for other pyro units. His second passive is called Fear Not, and this says that when you're inside Fantastic Voyage's circle, which is his burst, Passion Overload or the skill cooldown is decreased by 50%, and Bennett cannot be launched by his skill explosion when you charge it up to the full. We're going to move on to talking about weapons. So, Vixen, what are some weapons? And I know in my head there's a bunch of weapons coming to mind right now, but Vixen, what are some weapons you think of off the bat?
Like you said, Rip, there are a lot of different weapons that Bennett can use. For instance, personally, I use Festering Desire. It was a weapon that came in one of the early events in the game. I know a lot of people don't have that. It's just a personal weapon that I like. It's probably not even the best weapon, but I personally just like it. Helps with skill damage and a skill crit rate to maybe just buff a little bit more with his damage that he does in his skill to make it a little bit more useful, as well as an energy recharge. But the weapons you're going to be wanting to use with Bennett are going to be energy recharge swords. The whole point is to get his burst back as soon as possible, as well as keep his energy recharge as high as possible to create particles in general to feed your entire team, that even while they're off field, there are so many particles coming in that they can get their burst back as well. Some people can try to throw him on a damage build, but usually we're going to be talking about a burst support Bennett, and that's going to be best for you. I've even heard that some people use Sapwood Blade, especially as that's been a pretty good weapon for him. Probably the best weapon you're going to find for him is going to be Aquila Favonia. This is a physical damage bonus main stat weapon, so its main ability actually isn't that great. This weapon does have a very high base attack, and going a little bit deeper into what Riff was talking about earlier with how his burst, getting that attack bonus to your other characters when they stand inside of Bennett's burst field, and when their health is over 70%, they gain that attack bonus. That attack bonus is based off of Bennett's base attack, and only his base attack. Anything extra that you get in your artifacts that's, attack percent or attack this, attack that, doesn't help base attack. Your base attacks is going to be just higher level Bennett as well as the weapon. But this weapon has, once again, going back to the weapon, Aquila Favonia is his best weapon because it has 674 base attack, and it also gives a little bit of attack percent in the ability of the weapon as well, and it also can increase just a little bit more attack, so it gives Bennett a little bit just more personal damage to do with his skill and his burst to maybe just do a little bit more supporting damage for the other characters on the team. But once again, this base attack is just going to be so crazy for you to get at level 90 at 674 that it's just going to help your other characters to just do more damage because of the attack boost. Bennett is really only going to be useful for other characters that need that attack boost. So someone like Nilu, who's based off of HP and does damage based off of HP, obviously you're not going to need the attack boost because she's not going to be using it. Some other characters that could use it or whatever, we'll look at a little bit more in teams. But just make sure to keep that in mind when looking at that. Another 5-star weapon actually that has a very high base attack and the same high base attack as Aquila Favonia is Mistblooder Reforged, and this comes at a base attack of 674 as well. The reason that a lot of people aren't going to be using Mistblooder Reforged on Bennett is because this is a premium 5-star weapon, meaning that it's not something that you can get losing a 50-50 or getting off of the standard banner or whatever, where Aquila Favonia you can get in those areas, so it's a lot easier to get. Whereas you kind of have to wait for Mistblooder Reforged to come on the banner, and it's with Ayaka, it's Ayaka's weapon. And in doing so, usually, if you're going after Mistblooder Reforged, you're usually going to have another 5-star unit, most likely, that's going to be able to use it. So you're most likely not going to be using it on your Bennett. You could, and if you don't have Ayaka on field and you really kind of want to show off Bennett's damage and you don't have Aquila Favonia, you can throw this on him for a little bit of time and go back and forth between your Ayaka. But usually people will use the Aquila Favonia because it's a lot easier to get and it has that same base attack, so they have a little bit different abilities, but that is pretty much it.
Alright, so now we're going to be looking at artifacts for Bennett. There aren't too many that we could talk about. I mean, theoretically, we could talk about a lot of different sets, but I think at the end of the day, it's kind of traditional still with how you should build him. I think 4-piece Noblesse is one of the best options, in my opinion, just because you use his burst. I mean, he is a burst support. Like, that's really all you're using him. And Noblesse 4-piece is going to give your other units the 20% attack when you use your burst for 12 seconds. Just note that this can't stack with other characters, so if you have another Noblesse user, just know that you're not actually stacking that attack percent, whereas with something like Tenacity, you can actually stack the attack bonus you get from that. I do know people like to go some damage routes with Bennett, and I've done it in the past myself. It's pretty fun, and Bennett does scale very well. His damage can scale. I mean, he scales so well off attack. You could just do 4-piece Crimson, because with 4-piece Crimson, you're going to be using the skills to maximize the pyro damage bonus from the 2-piece side. And with how short the cooldown is for Bennett's skill, it's very, very easy to stack up that pyro damage bonus and then do like a massive hit with his burst. And if you did get C6 Bennett, if that's something you wanted to do, it would just make that much better, because all of your pyro damage is just going to do more damage. You could also just do some 2-piece combinations if you don't want to spend so much time trying to just maximize some substats on a specific set, or just going after the Noblesse domain. Noblesse is a good domain to go after, though, I think, because you can use that on a lot of other characters. It is a good set, so it's not like you'd be wasting your time. But if you just don't want to like hyper invest your Bennett, which is okay, I think doing 2-piece emblem for the energy, you can't go wrong with that, because you do want high energy recharge on your Bennett, but also like a 2-piece HP percent set, that being Tenacity and Vorakash's Glow for his healing. You could just do attack or pyro damage if you want more damage. There's a lot of different ways you can really maximize Bennett, because he's a great healer, great energy support. You really can't go wrong.
Now taking a quick look into actually how you want to build your Bennett on the different types of either a support build or more of a damage build. We're going to first look at the main stats that you're going to be looking to get, as well as the substats. On that support build, with your sand, you're going to be wanting to getting energy recharge sands. This is probably going to be best for you because, like Riff said before, you're going to be trying to get as much energy for himself as well as other teammates as possible to get his burst back, as well as to help them get their energy back as well for their bursts. This is going to be helping with that Noblesse set that Riff was also talking about, so that he can give more attack than he's already giving to other teammates. And so energy recharge is highly, highly recommended. If not, if you're looking for maybe more for that HP percent and you have really enough energy recharge from your weapon as well as maybe from your substats, then you could possibly go for an HP percent sands here to maybe help out a lot more on the healing aspect that you have. Your goblet should be HP percent. The other things like pyro damage bonus or physical or whatever, those are going to be focused more on the damage builds. So try to go for that HP percent to just help out with healing, considering you can't get an energy recharge main stat on the goblet here. Looking at his circlet, you're going to have two options really. You could go for an HP percent to go out maximizing your healing if you want to go triple HP percent, or if you already have that ER sands, then you could go HP percent here instead of the other option, which is healing bonus. It really just depends up to you. Looking at the two different things are going to be good for you. There is a third option as well. If you do have a Sacrificial Sword and you're trying to get particles for other teammates as well, the ability on Sacrificial Sword allows you to put particles out to the teammates and as to yourself if you land crit hits. And so if you could go anything else besides HP percent on this support build, it would be crit rate, so that you could actually help get just more crit hits to actually get more energy for your team. So that is probably the only instance here that you could use crit rate on a support build, because it's helping out Sacrificial Sword. Now lastly, with the support build, we're going to focus on looking at the substats that you're going to be looking at, and you're only going to really want two here, and the others can be extra, but you're going to want to focus on HP percent and energy recharge. HP percent is going to help you to actually heal a lot better with your team, as well as that's the whole point of the support build right here, along with this burst, trying to get that back as soon as possible, and that's why your second substat to look for is energy recharge. Now looking at the damage build for Bennett, you're going to be looking to get an attack percent sands to get as much damage out as possible, running a pyro damage bonus goblet, and a crit rate or crit damage circlet, whichever one you have maybe more of a necessary need for.
But now moving on from talking about artifacts and how a little bit you should build your Bennett, we're going to talk a little bit about the upgrade materials you'll need, and this is going to be a pretty easy one. He is a Mondstadt character, so he does take Windwheel Asters. You can find them all around Mondstadt. He does take Everflame Seeds, which is from the Pyro Regis Vine in Leeway. So if you're a new player, it shouldn't take you too long to get into Leeway. Just, maybe like 10 hours of gameplay and you'll already be at the Pyro Regis Vine if you're dedicated enough. He does take Treasure Hoarder Insignias, and those are really easy enemies to find and fight. as well as the Pyro gems, as well as saving up some more in Hero's Wit just to be able to level him. So looking at his talents, though, and leveling his burst specifically, because if you are going to level his talents, you could leave his normal and skill at level 1, and that would be perfectly okay, because again, you're really just using him for the burst. You can upgrade those if you want for a little personal damage, and that's totally fine. But you definitely want to upgrade the burst and even consider crowning the burst. Normally, we wouldn't tell someone to crown, but in this scenario, it's almost like, why not crown Bennett's burst? Again, we'll still leave that up to you, but like that would be a crown well spent. So looking at the talents again, he will take Philosophies of Resistance, and for the boss material is going to be Dvalin's Plume. But with all that said, we're going to move on to the next section, which is probably going to be a big one in this video, and that is teams. Just because Bennett can fit in so many different teams. And Vixen, I'm just going to go ahead and hand it off to you. What are some teams that maybe you run Bennett in, and other ideas for what good compositions that Bennett can fit in?
Well, Bennett fits in so many teams, it's not even funny. Just because of the amount of, once again, that attack bonus boost that he does, any character that can help that out. The major big team that I use him with is the quote-unquote number 1 team. I think it got dethroned, but the specific team that I use him with is Raiden, Yaimiko, Kazuha, and then Bennett. Kazuha does help a little bit with swirling maybe Pyro or Electro, but Bennett's burst is mainly going to be helping getting that huge buff to both Yaimiko, whoever's on field, doing a lot of damage while they stand inside of his burst, and that helps out my Raiden hits a lot more. Considering I don't have Raiden's weapon yet, and so a lot of my attack is a little bit lower than I would like right now, Bennett's attack boost in his burst is actually helping my Raiden do more damage just because, and sitting well enough, and it's almost as if I have the weapon already because of just his attack bonus buff in general, so it helps out her damage as well, just to help out the entire team do a little bit more, and it helps maybe with an overload if Kazuha swells as well. Some other teams that I use him in, I use him in my Zhao team. I have a Mona to help with a little bit with Zhao, as well as Barazan. But once again, because of how much energy my team really needs, as well as with the amount of healing that I need, Zhao loses his HP a little bit every time that he's in his burst. He loses it little bit by little bit, and by just standing in that Bennett burst actually for a little bit, it actually helps so much. And so it's giving that attack bonus once again to him, but a very necessary health boost so that I can use my Zhao burst consistently over and over again without having to worry about constantly losing HP and not having a healer on the field. The biggest thing that I feel that Bennett is really, really good for in a lot of different teams is that a lot of the times you want to figure out maybe a little bit later in the game that having a healer is great and all for a dedicated spot in the team, but you maybe want to get that healer out of there if they're just healing someone like Barbara, and getting someone like Bennett in there to do damage as well as buffing other teammates by getting a lot of particles and the attack boost to other people. And once again, that damage just helps so much. Getting a healer on the field that does a lot of damage and buffs and and does so many different things helps your entire team do a lot more overall damage, so that your DPS has a little bit of time off field to actually focus on, getting some energy or whatever. Bennett's just such an overall great character to throw in so many different teams just because of his utility to help in so many different ways.
Exactly, I agree so much. And there's really not a wrong team unless you're doing something completely different. Characters that don't need attack bonus, like going back, if you're using Yelan on field, which is fine, she doesn't need the attack bonus, so she's not really getting anything out of Bennett besides healing. One other thing I thought of is like, if you're using maybe like a Bloom team, Hyper Bloom, Burgeon, something where the damage is external or reaction damage, and that's specifically those 3 reactions I mentioned don't have anything to do with a character's attack stat. Obviously, Bennett's not going to be helping there, but I will say I do use Bennett in one of my Burgeon teams just because he's a good healer, and that's the main reason, but also so he's a good energy provider to someone like Toma. Bennett is a good energy support for Toma to give Toma back the energy, because Toma really needs that energy because you want to be getting his burst out as soon as possible. But also, he's just a great healer for the team. Bennett, that is.
One more team that actually works probably really well, and with a lot of the more topical things that have been going on right now, especially with people that are looking to get Linny, Bennett, I can't say it enough, is probably going to be a great character for you. In the Taponauts Bowl, we talked about how Xiangling, Bennett, and maybe another swirler of some kind will be great for Linny. Bennett is going to be such a stable part of anybody's account right now, and especially if you're starting Genshin right now or you're coming back to Genshin, please don't miss out on the free event Bennett that's going to be getting for free, because that's going to help so much just with your account. You're going to really want to use that as much as possible, and getting that Linny is going to help you a lot, as well as maybe in the future, a lot of different characters in Fontaine may be HP percent based, and that may just help with getting double hydro to actually help with Bennett's increase in healing, because double hydro resonance gives more HP percent to all characters on the team, as well as just in general. It's going to be a great thing for maybe a vaporized team. Maybe that'll be a lot bigger in Fontaine, as well as just buffing in general everyone. It seems like that's going to be a big thing as well. And Fontaine has a lot of different buffs and debuffs on enemies. So Bennett, I think, is going to be a really, really big, useful thing to do. And so I think that if you don't have Bennett built or you don't have him, be looking forward to this and build your Bennett so that he can be really, really good for a lot of different teams that are already in the game, as well as ones in the future.
I did want to quickly point out his constellations. Normally, we don't really touch on constellations in a discussion on a 4-star. I just want to talk about them because for Bennett, at least, there are some big changes to think about, especially like the very first constellation, where if you get his first constellation, the attack bonus you can get from his burst, there's no longer that restriction on they have to be above 70% HP and they get the attack, and if they're below 70% HP, they get healed. Right? This kind of just removes that whole thing and just says you're going to get healed up to 70% and then it will stop, but also you're just going to have the attack bonus the whole time. And on top of that, you gain an additional 20% of Bennett's base attack for that bonus he's giving out. Also, C2, when Bennett's HP falls below 70%, his own energy recharge is increased by 30%. So those very first two constellations, very, very good, no matter really how you build your Bennett, because it's just going to be so helpful to your team. C3, C5 just increase the skill and the burst respectively by 3, which really the C5 is the one that matters. And the C4, using a normal attack as a second attack of his skill, charge level 1, will perform a follow-up attack, and this attack will deal 135% of the second attack's damage. And then the C6 is the big, how do I put it, not controversy, but people will talk about if you C6 your Bennett, you could potentially ruin your account. And then lately, we've actually been hearing people caving in to C6ing their Bennett and being like, well, it's actually not that bad because you're only messing up 3 characters in the entire game where you can't really use anymore with a Bennett. And so, Vixen, what's kind of your opinion on that?
Well, I think the big problem, like you said, with the C6 on Bennett was that the C6 basically has Sword, Claymore, and Polearm using characters. Whenever they're inside of the burst field, they gain a 15% pyro damage bonus, which could be good. But the issue that a lot of people were talking about is that their weapons are then infused with pyro. And a lot of characters that maybe use that are, that could be an issue if obviously they're going to be doing a different element and, their kit is based off of doing more damage on that other element. So for Raiden, for instance, if she got this infusion, that wouldn't be good because she turns energy into electro damage bonus, and if she's doing pyro, that's not good. The thing is that a lot of different characters already inside of their kits, if you look in their burst or their skills or whatever gives them that infusion, it'll say that this infusion that they get in their kit cannot be overridden. And what that means is if you take Raiden and hop inside of a Bennett burst, and Bennett tries to put this pyro infusion on top of, let's say, for instance, this Raiden can actually just cancel that pyro infusion because of, in that description, it says that her infusion of electro can't be overridden in her burst. She can then continue to do the electro and then obviously be focusing on doing that. Characters like Zhao, other characters that are doing that. The only 3 characters like Rift was talking about that are going to be taking a hit to this is Eula, Ayaka, and Ketching. Now, the only one that I could see maybe early game players having a real issue with this is possibly Ketching. But in recent, we've seen Ketching do a lot better when she's actually been put on a Hyperbloom team, which has nothing to do with Pyro. So keeping Pyro out of the equation for Ketching, we've solved that issue. You shouldn't be really using a Ketching with that. Try to put her on a Hyperbloom team. That'll fix this problem easily if you have Bennett at C6. Now we go on to Ayaka. Ayaka does do okay on a melt team, and she can do really, really good. But the thing is that, and especially if you're going to be using her on a 4-piece Blizzard, you're going to be getting that huge crit rate boost by getting characters frozen. So you're really losing out on 20% crit rate so that you can focus on crit damage and other stats. So right there, we've already kind of fixed that problem. Try to use your Ayaka if you have her on that freeze team if you're not already. It's really better for her anyways, so I would say to use that in general instead of using a Bennett. So there's another fix that we can kind of get rid of. Just don't use Bennett maybe as well specifically in that team. Try to use, if you really want to do a melt team, like Xiangling or someone else to kind of buff, and use like Diona or Barbara to heal instead. Finally, getting over to Eula. Eula could maybe be that problem character that you're like, well, I want the attack boost, but, my character is, I've got Bennett and his C6 is then going to give that attack boost, but it's also going to be infused, and that's really going to mess with my physical damage Eula. Well, Eula, yes, your initial hits when you do her burst, basically she's got a sword that follows her and at the end is a huge physical hit. That won't change and turn into Pyro, even if you're sitting inside of Bennett's C6 burst. So that's not something to worry about, but maybe people are talking about her normal attacks or whatever inside of that are going to be turned into Pyro. So that could be an issue if you're really thinking about it, and your damage could go down a little bit in your normal attacks. But that's really a toss-up to really be if that's really too much of a problem for you. That could be totally up to you. But her big damage hit that you're going to be focusing on anyways doesn't turn into Pyro anyways, so you don't have to worry too much about that in the first place. So those three characters are going to be the only ones that really take a quote-unquote hit, but we've kind of already solved the issues with each three of the characters, which is why in recent times we've seen that there are really a lot of characters that, they really could be a problem, but their infusions kind of take care of that issue and don't allow Bennett's Pyro to be forced on them. The three characters that we talked about already are put into other different teams that don't need a Bennett as well. Eula could use a super conduct team that'd be better for her, considering it'll increase physical damage. So each of those characters can be put in other teams that actually probably do better without having that Bennett burst.
And I know it's like that was a lot to say and a lot to talk about. Maybe that was, you might see as like extra, but I think it needed to be said because it really is a lot of people like, I don't want to C6 my Bennett because I hear people talk about it would ruin my account. But really, you're only hurting a very few select characters you might not even have.
That will end Bennett's discussion video. Let us know in the comments if you'll be going after him and if maybe he'll be coming in the upcoming banners, or if you're going to be going after that specific event, or maybe just tell us about your own Bennett that you have and how you have him built. Tell us if he's impacted your account positively, or if that C6 has actually maybe hurt you, if the way you've kind of built him already. Once again, we are looking to create that Discord server at 1,000 subscribers, so please do like and subscribe. It would help us out a lot. Finally, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.